Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Novelists Unwind. My name is Johnnie Alexander. I'm so glad to have you watching our interview today with Beth White. Beth is an award-winning author. She has won the Carol Award. She's won the Romantic Times Book Club Reviewer's Choice Award and also the Inspirational Reader's Choice Award. I think those awards must be especially meaningful because they come from readers, huh?
Yeah, indeed. That's been quite a long time ago since I've even entered anything in that contest, but it was really neat because those are the people you really want to impress as your readers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we're really glad to have Beth with us today. We're going to be talking about her writing journey and her latest book, which is just coming out, A Reluctant Belle. I'm going to hold that up because the cover is so, so beautiful. It's actually the second book in is it the Daughtry? Is that how you're pronouncing it?
Daughtry House, yeah.
Daughtry House Series. And then the first book is A Rebel Heart. So can you just tell us a little bit about the history behind the series, because it's actually very fascinating.
Well, I had in mind, you mean as far as why I picked that?
Yeah.
Well, I was trying to come up with a new series idea after I had finished the Gulf Coast Chronicles, which is a completely different set of time periods and characters and everything. And I kind of wanted to move to my home state of Mississippi and kind of explore the history there. And of course, it's very tied to Civil War and racial developments in the South. And I picked Tupelo, Mississippi, as the location, to be straight up honest, because it's Elvis Presley's birthplace. I knew that almost everybody in America would be aware of Tupelo, Mississippi, as at least in their consciousness. So I thought, wouldn't it be fun to find out how Tupelo was settled as a little town in Mississippi and what was going on. And my acquisitions editor at the time was really, really interested in Reconstruction history, and she suggested that I kind of explore that. And the more I looked into it, the more fascinating I found that. So, and as it happens, Tupelo was incorporated as a city right around the time that Reconstruction was going on in all across the South. And so I picked 1870 because that was the year that Tupelo was incorporated as a city, and just began to explore the idea of Reconstruction in the South. And so I thought, okay, well, I wanted a 3-book series of something tied together in some way. So I thought, okay, I'm going to have 3 sisters who have grown up on a plantation. Well, there are no plantations left in Tupelo, but fortunately, there is one in West Point, Mississippi, not too far away. And so I visited the plantation there, the Waverly Plantation in West Point, Mississippi, as sort of a design for my fictional plantation, and I had my 3 sisters grow up there, go through the various experiences during the Civil War as backstory, and then launched the series as the plantation is falling apart. The Civil War is over. People are trying to regroup themselves and move on with their lives and recover from all this trauma. And so that's kind of how I launched the series with the 3 Daughtry sisters, Selah, Joelle, and Aurora. And 3 different personalities and backgrounds and lifestyles. But that's the idea that ties the series together, is those 3 sisters.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And I love, because even this is part of all 3 covers, right? The house.
And that's actually Waverly Mansion.
Is it really?
It's the real place. And I went and visited there as I was writing the first book. And the family that owns Waverly now has owned the place since the 1960s. And the dad that actually renovated the place is still alive. And he and his daughter still live there, the Snow family. And they're just as kind and gracious and delightful about sharing this beautiful home. They've refurbished it with antiques from the period of right before the Civil War and during the Civil War. So all the antiques are, if not actually left from the original family, the Young family that built the house. Some of the antiques there are actually original to the house, and it's remarkable that those antiques have not disappeared. They're still there, and so it's been restored pretty much to its original condition, which is quite an expensive process. You can imagine. So the Snow family allows tours to come through there, and they charge a little small fee, for people to come through and tour the house. But Miss Snow was so kind to just sit on the porch with me in a rocking chair with a glass of tea and tell me about the Young family and little details that you wouldn't get, from reading a book.
Right.
She had thoroughly researched the whole thing. So yeah, that picture on the front is the real deal.
That's great. That is wonderful. I just love that whole picture. I mean, it's so Southern, right? The rocking chair, the porch, the sweet tea, and just
and this magnolia tree in the front yard. It's literally hundreds of years old, and it's still there. They still have peacocks running around.
Wow.
Mr. Peacock is in the first book. And he's still there, or his great.
I didn't even know about that there were peacocks just kind of roaming around like that. That's interesting. Yeah. Except I was doing research for a story, and I was in Oak Ridge, Tennessee not too long ago, and stopped at an Appalachian museum, and there were peacocks roaming around there too. So maybe they were more common than people know.
Because apparently they're not that hard to raise, and they're just beautiful. I mean, people obviously they're pets.
Yeah.
But they're there, and some of the amenities of those plantations, you think about the way people lived back then, and it's really startling. For example, you could see a hump. We were sitting on the back porch, just kind of looking out over the back side of the mansion, and there's like this big hump of land. I said, "What is that?" And she said, "That's where the ice house used to be." Ice house. So logically, if they were going to make ice cream and cool their iced tea, there would have to be some way of doing that. So the steamboats would come up the river nearby with blocks of ice packed in sawdust, and just offload them to the plantation. They would store them in that ice house, and it would last for 6 to 9 months.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
There's a bathhouse. The bathhouse plays quite an important role in a reluctant Belle. There's a bathhouse across the road with literally a swimming pool. It's a marble tiled swimming pool with that's fed by a spring. It's not like a chlorinated pool like we have.
Sure.
But the family would go over there and go swimming.
That's amazing. What fun it is to find out that just those little tidbits of information, though, and to be able to incorporate them into your stories. That's really cool.
I love that part of the research and the writing.
Yeah, that's really fun. And I think it's really fun that you picked the Reconstruction, because there's lots of great Civil War stories out there, and that is a very popular part of history, and people enjoy reading that. But to go just that little bit later when I think in one of your interviews you were talking about just things everyone's trying to figure it out. The plantation owners are trying to figure out how they're going to now do their, what they're going to do. We've got people who've been freed trying to figure out what they're going to do, and you've got people from the north coming in. I think you said sticking their fingers in the batter too, was the way you put it.
Yeah, it was a really confusing time. And obviously some of it's very dark. People, when they're trying to save themselves, and trying to maintain a lifestyle that they've become used to. Some of the things that people would do to keep themselves afloat were just egregious, as far as the way they would treat other people. But at the same time, there were also great heroes, unexpected heroes, people who wanted to do the right thing. They wanted to help the freed slaves figure out how they were going to survive and not mistreat them. And it's really interesting. This particular period was a fairly short window before the Ku Klux Klan and all that and the civil rights codes really took hold again from the and really kind of sent things spiraling down into where we wound up in the 60s with the civil rights era. But there was a little short window of time from about 1868 to about 1872 where there African American representatives were being elected to the state legislatures in Mississippi and Alabama, and they were being elected to civic offices in their towns, in their counties, and people were trying to make this thing work. And it's really hard to look back at that period of time after that where things just really went south.
Oh,
it was a big mess. But that was a little short window of time where things were really, it was just interesting. As you tell a story for a novel, and you try to plant your characters in there, it's a really tricky thing to keep from giving them modern sensibilities because, obviously they can't look forward and see how things are going to all come out. They're just flying blind and doing the best they can, with the information that they have. And so trying to figure that out was a tricky and really interesting process.
It can be. I mean, I know sometimes I get frustrated with heroines. I mean, you want strong women even in historical times, but when you're reading a heroine, you're just thinking, yeah, that's just taking a little bit too far. It's like that's not. She still had to live within those confines and conventions. She might break them and bend them a little bit, but sometimes I think modern novelists they're just trying too hard to make a woman of that time something she could not be, I guess. So you're right, that is a tricky kind of thing. Well, another thing I thought was really interesting was that you in the first story in this series, you have a hero who's with the Pinkerton Detective Agency, and you said, and that you've read detective memoirs from Alan Pinkerton. So can you just tell us, I don't know, just maybe something you learned from that you didn't know, or you said they were really fun to read.
Yeah, so really entertaining, and I don't know why I never ran across those stories before, but Pinkerton was he was a really interesting guy. He was a great businessman because he took kind of an accidental occurrence in his life where he finds some fake currency or something and turned it in to the federal to the federal marshal, and they praised him for being smart enough to realize counterfeit when he saw it, and he took that little incident and kind of turned it into a business and hired other people and kind of learned as he went, as most businessmen probably do, and learned how to leverage that really particular skill that he had for observation. And one of his particular skills was not just observation, but it was actually taking notes and keeping records so that the things that he learned he could draw on later. He would if were arrested for some crime, then he would make notes of all of that person's contacts and all of his relationships, so that he could use kind of lay a web of information that he could draw on, which is the forerunner of our FBI databases. So interesting. But anyway, so he's running his business, and close to the end of his career, he thought, well, people were so fascinated. People always want to interview him about, his experiences. And so he began to just write down the accounts of some of the more famous cases that he dealt with. And that was what was so cool for me, because I could see, you could trace the detectives' thought processes and his methods from the beginning of, okay, this is the guy we're going after, and this is how we're going to lay a trap for him, and this is how we're going to catch him. And it was really cool to see how he would choose other agents. He might not be directly, Pinkerton himself might not be directly involved in the investigative process, but he would choose agents that could play such and such a role effectively. Like, for example, there was a case where he was trying to trap, I want to say, a woman who they suspected of some crime, or I can't remember what the crime was, but he recruits this really good looking young agent and plants this guy in this woman's path, and he develops a relationship with this woman that lasts for several months.
Wow.
He's slowly working himself into her life and slowly gaining her trust, until finally she just kind of lets down her guard and lets him see all of the nefarious things that she's into, and boom, they got her. It kind of reminded me a lot of the Simon Baker show about The Mentalist. Of how you play the psychological game of getting people to trust you, and it's a little bit sneaky and creepy almost.
Yeah.
I wanted my Pinkerton agent to employ some of those tactics where you're just kind of on the border of flat out, I'm telling a lie. This, but at the same time, it's for a purpose of trapping a criminal.
Good. Yeah. No, that's great. That just sounds like so much fun. Yeah. Wow. Well, time flies. It always does. It's just like, wow, I could talk to you forever. But we want to show again a reluctant Belle. So I have just started this book, and it starts off with a bang. I mean, I just love the opening with Joelle and her childhood friend.
I have kind of introduced their sort of combative relationship in A Rebel Heart, and so I've taken their kind of childhood.
That's cute,
I guess, into adulthood and turned it into a romance. That's one of my favorite little romantic things.
Yeah, it's really cool. Well, one last question I always ask is, when you get done writing a novel, what do you do to unwind?
Well, as it happens, I am at my little quasi vacation house. We're going to retire here eventually, but it's a little former fisherman's cottage on Wolf Bay.
Oh, wow.
Right off of Mobile Bay, off the Gulf Coast, obviously. And I can see my house is on the water, and I have a little dock. I don't fish, gross, but I do go sit out in the swing and just kind of watch the water and watch the boats go by. So yeah, that's what I do. I take a book and hang out, watch the dolphins. They're dolphins.
Oh, fun.
They don't come they don't come every day, but sometimes you'll just see a fin kind of floating by, and there they go. It's really cool.
That would be really cool. Well, that sounds just dreamy.
We are.
Oh, how much fun. Well, Beth, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being my guest today and sharing the history. I mean, that just fascinates me. It makes me want to dig.
It's delightful to get to visit with you. I appreciate it to get to meet you.
Thank you so much. And everybody, thank you for watching, and pop back in again for another episode of Novelists Unwind. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.